Cameron, and this is my presentation for my informant speech, and it's on home brewing beer. And home brewing beer has become a recent hobby of mine, and the first process of brewing is the boil, and that's basically producing your beer. That's adding your malt, your hops, and other things to create the actual flavor for the beer. And temperature is a very important thing in the first step of brewing, because if you boil too high with the grains, the grains will produce tannins. Those will produce off flavors and will give you funky flavors in your beers. And the next process of beer brewing is to move the mixture into your primary fermenter, which is where your main fermentation is going to happen. And before you add your beer to your primary fermenter, it's very important that you allow the beer to cool before you add the yeast into the beer. Because if the beer is too hot when you add the yeast, it will actually kill the yeast and the fermentation won't actually happen. And then you close off the primary fermenter and add the airlock, so it allows carbon dioxide out of the beer but won't allow air into the mixture, because then you'll get mold and other things that you don't want in the beer. And the next step of the process is to rack the beer, and that's to put the beer into the secondary fermenter. And that's where some people add extra hops and other things to create other flavors, or you can add spices to add a spice to your beer. And also, some people say it's not a necessary step because it'll just allow other chances for contamination of the beer. Whereas if you just leave it in the primary fermenter, you don't have to worry about sanitation, because sanitation is very important in beer brewing, so you don't have bacteria that you do not want inside the beer that will cause molds. And so the process of secondary fermentation just allows another chance for you to cause contamination. So the people that argue for secondary fermentation say that it allows the beer to become more clear, so you have less sediment and yeast active in the beer. And another thing some people say to do while you're doing secondary fermentation is to cold crash, which is allow it to get to a cooler temperature, and that will make the yeast going to almost like a hibernation, so it'll drop off, and that'll help clear your beer as well. And the last step of beer brewing is to bottle the beer. And right before you bottle the beer, you're actually going to create almost a simple syrup with the bottling sugar. And you boil water and dissolve the bottling sugar into the water. Then you'll mix it into your mixture before bottling. Then after you do that, you're going to bottle the beer, add the caps, and then you'll want to wait like a week or so, maybe a week or two, before opening the beers, because the priming sugar in the water and the simple syrup create the carbonation of the beer. And equipment for brewing, you're going to need a large pot, a spoon to be able to stir during the boil, a secondary fermenter if you're planning on doing secondary fermentation or clearing of the beer, and you're going to need a multi-purpose sanitizer, preferably a non-rinse sanitizer, because some of the sanitizer you're going to buy are going to have harmful chemicals in them. So making sure you have one that you don't have to rinse is kind of a nice thing. And you're going to want a hydrometer to be able to measure the gravity of your beer before and after. This allows you to figure out the alcohol percentage of your beer, and if you're doing it from a kit, you'll be able to tell if it turns out to the right gravity and if it actually came out the way it's supposed to. And a thermometer is a very important thing also, to make sure that your beer during the boil is at the right temperature, so you don't bleach tannins from the grains, or even maybe during fermentation to make sure the yeast isn't going to be at too high of a temperature. And bottle capper for capping the bottles during the bottling and priming stage. And miscellaneous information is a kit beer of a 5-gallon kit usually takes around a month to complete, from the starting the brewing process to the bottling and the priming of the bottles. That is from brewing time to being able to drink it. And from the beginning of brewing, the average cost of the brewing kits, if you're going to do it by the kits, is about 30 to 40 bucks for all that comes with ingredients, the grains, the malt, the yeast, and the priming sugar. And different brewing methods are all grain. That's where you get all the grains, and you make all of your own malt, and that's from the boiling of the grains and basically condensing it into a liquid. And the next one's going to be extract, where they already did most of the boiling for you, but then you have to add the yeast and the grains in, and you still have to do some steeping of the grains. And then partial mash, which is you're still going to have some extracts, but at the same time you're going to be doing some of the boiling on your own to get some of the malt. And that was my presentation on beer brewing, guys.